Good morning and welcome to the Daily Light Devotion. I hope you've had a wonderful Tuesday and looking forward to today, 25th of June. We are going to continue in Acts 7. We're going to look at verses 17 to 29 today, right? And here's Stephen continues tracing God's redemptive uh, story through Israel's history. And he focuses on Moses, God's chosen deliverer. Moses was born into oppression. We all know that, right? Miraculously preserved and positioned for leadership in Pharaoh's palace. But when he tried to act on his own timing, his own people rejected him actually, and he had to flee. So here Stephen is drawing a clear parallel. Like Moses, Jesus was also sent by God to save, but people didn't recognize him. So, what we learn from these passages that he reminds us that God's plan unfolds in his own, in his timing, and obedience must is very important to align with his voice, not just to our zeal. So, verses 17 to 19 says, "But when the time of the promise drew near, another king arose who did not know Joseph. As God's promise to Abraham was coming closer to fulfillment, oppression increased. We all know. Um, so what happens is often when God's breakthrough is near, resistance intensifies. Right? There are all sorts of distractions. There's all sorts of um, things that are trying to take us away from achieving God's purpose in our lives. So Pharaoh's fear led to violence, and the enemy always tries to destroy what God's um, birthing. How does he do that? By distraction, by lie, by deception. Remember, when we accept that deception and lie, we give him a vote. Otherwise, he doesn't go through. And today, we have to understand that. Verses 20 and 22 says God preserves and prepares Moses. At that this time Moses was born and was well pleasing to God, educated in all wisdom of Egyptians. So Moses was born during the intense persecution the Hebrew or the Jewish people were going through. But he was pleasing to God and divinely protected, right? We know that, like I said, he was raised in Pharaoh's house. He received training and influence, and God was preparing him. Um, our backgrounds, even when shaped by the worldly system, can be a part of God's preparation because Moses was trained in the Egyptian way, but God was preparing him. Verses 23 and 25 says, "Now when he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren. He supposed they would have understood. So Moses felt, stirred up to act because he knew God had called him with a purpose. And he had sensed his call to deliver Israel. But he moved on his own timing. He did not wait for God. And the people didn't recognize his role yet. The zeal without God's timing leads to rejection. So, because of that, it took another 40 years, right? We, so look at it, total history, because of that one act where he did not, trust God and took things in his own. Took the Israeli people 80 years to reach the promised land. 40 years for Moses to be with, Jethro, his father-in-law, and in the desert, and then another 40 years after they left Egypt for them to reach the promised land. So sometimes we take steps which may delay what God is doing because we took it in our own flesh. But God's promises still came true, but there had to be a little bit of rerouting done, right? Now, verses 26 to 20 says, "Rejection and retreat. Who made you a ruler, a judge over us?" This is what the Hebrews, the Jewish people were telling Moses that time. And then at this same Moses fled. So the very people Moses was trying to help rejected him. And this questions what mirrors Stephen applies They asked of Jesus, who made you the ruler over us? And Moses fled, and God's plan was delayed, but not destroyed. Remember. So, what are some of the life applications of this verses from 1729? We can learn. Are we moving in God's plan, or we are trying to do things in the world? Right? Moses was had the right desire. Or like us, we have not the right desire to follow God's plan, right? But a wrong step or a wrong moment, which is made out of excitement, or maybe made out of just wanting to see God's plan come true, could set us back in what God has plans for us, right? Because God will move when he tells us to move, he knows the exact time we need to move. So that is very important. And preparation is never wasted. Moses spent 40 years being trained in Egypt. None of it was wasted. He spent another 40 years being trained in the desert, right? So God was still preparing him. And similarly, while we are right now waiting for God's purpose to be fulfilled, we are in training. We are in training mode. We've got to take small faith action to see and believe in our thought life, in the way we think, in the way we act, in the way we behave. Right? We need to know that we are constantly, our identity doesn't change, right? We cannot be discouraged by rejection, or we cannot discourage because something doesn't happen. If some people reject us, we shouldn't be discouraged. Moses was rejected by his own people, right? Yet later used mighty to deliver the very people who rejected him. So rejection doesn't cancel our calling. It may simply redirect us to a deeper preparation, right? Where Moses prepared in the desert, taking care of sheep, the shepherd. It was a sign, right? Our shepherd is Jesus. So we need to spend time with Jesus and prepare for things God has. And when we see that manifest, um, it'll impact so many people and last for generations. So God sees our situation even when we are in exile. Right? Moses wasn't forgotten. And if we are in the wilderness season, God still sees us and his promises still stand. We must understand that. So I want to encourage you. God has chosen you, right? He prepares you and he will send you in his right time. Now, when I talk about time, means when you are prepared, because it is not God who's controlling time. God is above time, beyond. He's not in time. He's above, right? He's a sovereign God. But God doesn't want us to be destroyed because his plans are too powerful for us to handle. So the more we build trust, the more we become less of ourselves and let Christ flow through us, the sooner the time will come. Right? Moses was not prepared because of his mistakes, because there was self-centered in it, self-centeredness in it. The less we become self-centered, the more we become Christ-centered, right? The more we get God flow in our lives, is the faster the time will come. So that is a very important thing to understand, because we can be immature all our lives and God is not going to try to destroy us by giving his plans, because in our own we cannot handle the plan. So the lesser we become, lesser we are of ourselves, the more we're going to see God's plan, and the more of Christ flows through us. We're going to see God's plan. So I want to encourage you with that. We need to stay faithful. We need to build trust. We need to build faith. We need to walk in God's purpose and know every day that every morning that I get up, I'm thankful, Lord, I'm in your purpose. I'm in a relationship with you. I can get close to you. I hope this encourages you from Moses' life. God bless you. Have a wonderful Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.